Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the OverPower Mountain podcast. I'm bringing you the OverPower Basics. Today's focus is going to be events and missions. Probably more going to focus on events and the idea and concept behind them. However, events and missions being synonymous with each other, or symbiotic, as some would say. So, mission cards, of course, coming out in the first set. And when I say the first set, I mean the original set of OverPower. Mission cards of being a way to win the game of OverPower. So, of course, of all your mission cards, which you have to venture from the reserve mission pile, all get up to the completed mission pile. And by all, I mean all 7 of them. You do have 7 mission cards. If this scenario happens, of course, you win the game of OverPower. Sounds so simple, right? Just simple, boing, bing bong. Bet 7 one hand. Why not? Been there, done that. Trust me, it's a wild ride. Been on both sides of that wild ride. That's for sure. So, mission cards have been around since the beginning as a way to win the game of OverPower. Now, in Mission Control, which was the name of the third set of OverPower, which for its own reason, and we'll get into that in a historic podcast, but for its own reason had a really wild, for everything from the distribution to the ability to get every card in one box to revolutionizing and bringing, several of the iconic cards of today, DZ, EE, cards of that nature, as well as, of course, event cards themselves. So, by the third set of OverPower, I think realized that they needed to add an additional strategic layer to the game. So in the Mission Control set of OverPower, I want to put this at 96. Early 96. That's where I'm going to put Mission Control right now. Again, we'll do a historic podcast where I will have actual facts for you. I'm just throwing that out from my mind. So, event cards debuted in this set, Mission Control. They instantly became very powerful cards. There were cards that stopped icons from being played. I reference icon as if it's, like energy icon. So no energy icon may be used to attack. Probably, actually, still to this day, one of the most powerful events that was ever released in the game of OverPower. Now, an event works in the nature of when you draw your initial 8 cards. It's actually the first thing that you do. So you actually look for event cards in your hand. You declare to your opponent whether or not you have an event card. You place it face down in the center of the table, and you redraw for that event card. At that particular time, if your opponent also has an event card, they will also place it down face down on the table, and they will also redraw for their event card. At which time, it depends on whoever's going first in that particular battle. You will then resolve the event cards accordingly. So if I'm going first, I will flip my event card over and I will say, as we just mentioned, no energy icons may be used to attack for the remainder of battle. They will say, okay, and then they will flip over theirs, and theirs says, no strength power cards may be used for the remainder of battle. So that would be, of course, to attack or defend in that scenario. So both very powerful events, as you could see, and it would be a unique battle depending on the decks and the strategies that we're playing. But I do reference just for you to understand that, there is an order of how events are played. Because, of course, there can be scenarios where certain events can affect a front line or a deck or a hand before another decision has to be made based off another event. So very, very powerful. Now, a lot of the times, certain players, even when they're thinking of deck strategies, they revolve their whole entire deck around their event strategy. So, it to some players, it is the be all end all of their deck. Certain events out there can actually be bet as many as you can type of scenario, and by that I mean venture as many mission cards as you can. That battle based off an event and how powerful it is. Remember, events do always affect you and your opponent, but you knowing that you're putting that event in your deck can obviously build strategically around it to make sure that you're not affected, and of course they are. So strategy and events and OverPower just all of a sudden took a huge turn as as many weaknesses as the mission control set had. I think in my eyes, it also added this dynamic that created strategy to the game of OverPower that wasn't seen before. So really, really unique, especially to us longtime players. It really added another layer in depth to the game. So each mission set got, I believe it was 5 events, and each event affected in different mannerisms. Now, again, the events look like almost newspaper articles, done in almost a comic book style, kind of visually quite nice. And on the back, I believe, of the mission, they have like a blurb from the comic as well. So that's kind of a nice touch there in that respect as well on the back of the mission cards, which is the venturing cards you have on the side. So the event cards look like those newspaper articles, really kind of neat in that respect. And then, of course, at the bottom, they give you the text of what they do. So they have 5 respectively in each of, at that particular time, mission set that was out. Some more powerful than others, some even offering to kill a frontline character. Very, 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 very powerful style of event, especially when they offered a character named Beyonder, which allowed him to play dead character specials. Something, again, we'll get into another later podcast, but you could imagine the power an event could have where I say, okay, I kill this character, but I still get to play every single special he does. But whichever character you kill or KO, you're not going to be able to play their specials and have to discard them. So it's like such an instant, advantageous play immediately for your strategy in your deck. I mean, kill card in the first hand is one of the most dreaded and talked about and still thought about things I still have to do even today, thinking about tournament play. So events truly being as, again, how powerful they are, always working with your strategy with them. And of course, you have 5 to choose from. In most strategies, you're using a lot of the times just 1, maybe 2 of an event set. There are other options where sometimes it gets up to 3, and I mean, you could even potentially use all of them if you really, truly wanted to. Now, there are stronger and weaker ones, obviously. Some of the stronger ones being like the no icon style events. No energy icon may be used to attack for remainder of battle, or no fighting icon may be used to attack for remainder of battle. Of course, you have the power card ones as well. No energy power cards may be used this battle. Like, those are powerful in their own respect because, you can't use it for defense or offense. Whereas in the icon one, you can still use power cards for defensive potential and purposes. So you can see already that, no icon or no power card ones would be very, very advantageous right away. And then, of course, there's other no ones as well. You have the situation of like no teamworks. Teamworks, as we talked about in our Universe Basics podcast, you realize they're very, very potent, and a lot of people, have potential to play, between 3 to 10 of them. there's no endless limit to teamworks. Some even say no universe cards, so you could even hit both allies and teamworks. There are other ones, super potent special ones, especially for people that play a lot of teamworks and power cards. There's one that says no special cards. So, all those special cards where you get defense from your team, or, get the big oomph for big attacks, as we spoke about in the specials podcast, or even, having the ability to negate things. Of course, your opponent can't play specials anyways, so your negate would just be a mute card anyways in that scenario. But, having that ability, and then you, of course, having a lot of teamworks, power cards, that's also in its own respect a high bet scenario or a high venture scenario. And then I think there's probably the most powerful one in the game right now. And you're like, wow, what do you mean, OPGOAT? There's an even more powerful event than everything you've mentioned so far. And truthfully, there is. And it's the last game changer sort of event in the OverPower game right now. And it revolves around, obviously in OverPower you have to make your decision. And this is going to be probably the final of the OverPower Basics podcast, is the, any hero battle site decision you have to make when you're building a deck, whether you're playing with any heroes or whether you're using battle sites and activators in your deck. So if you're playing any heroes, you get the advantage of picking a mission set called Shattered Image, and then later on I believe there's a 25th anniversary fan-made set that was grandfathered into the tournament scene as well, but it just mimics Shattered Image. And in Shattered Image, they came out with an event that says no activators. You heard me right. Originally that didn't overly hurt the scenario until, of course, that got teamed up with an any hero that sort of sat on the board and destroyed battle sites, known as Devourer of Worlds. We're not going to spend too much time on that right now. That's its own whole big conversation. So that teamed up with the event became almost an unstoppable force, and any heroes actually, became the meta of OverPower for years and years and years and years and years and years. Battle sites just never saw play because of this Devourer of Worlds / no activator combo that just sort of dominated the scene. Very a la Vertigo style, took over the meta for quite a long time. To the point actually where, and I'll just say it here very quickly, to the point actually where Devourer of Worlds is the first card in OverPower history to fully get banned from tournament or competitive play, as it just, even through all the erratas that were attempted, was just too powerful with that event combo to allow for diversity of play. So, but to just finish off this Shattered Image, this not only gave no activators, which isn't like the no specials event. No specials event actually says affected specials are not discarded, whereas no activators just is blank. So you actually have to discard every activator that you draw in that particular hand when they have that event. you discard them all, including ones that if they venture further, you have to discard those, or if you have any draw mechanic throughout that hand, you continue to discard them. So very, like I said, the last most powerful event in the game. However, it does, minus, I haven't really seen the strategy other than that, but minus, it forces you to play any hero decks, which is its own, unique strategy in its own way. So it does have its, pros and cons in that effect. So there's a lot of powerful events out there. Now, there are 3 additional events known as any missions. Now, I believe the first one came out in JLA, and the other 2 one was promotional, and then the last one came out in Classic, I believe. May have been a promotional near the end as well. However, there are 3 any missions. The first one was remove 1 hit from every character that has an inherent ability. Now, of course, on a character card, if you notice underneath their stat ranges on the side there, that they may have writing at the bottom. This is their inherent ability. This is an additional ability to their stat range there and all their specials that they get to use throughout either a battle, the game, whatever the inherent ability states. So in this scenario, you get to remove a hit that's on their permanent record. So if you've attacked me and I've taken the hit and we've gone to the next battle and the hit's gone into my permanent record, and then I draw that event, I say remove a hit, and there's a character with an inherent ability and a hit on them. I remove that hit. It's actually quite a very, powerful event, especially, the fact that I can have all my characters with inherent abilities and know that I get to remove at least 1 hit from everybody when that event comes up. And if I see a character on your side that doesn't have one, that's obviously who I attack first, depending on their strategic thoughts. So great little any mission. Again, I believe it came out in JLA. And what I mean by any mission is, depending on, doesn't matter what mission set you've chosen and what events or set you're playing. Obviously, your event set has to correspond with the missions that you're playing. You get to play these any missions. So the first one, of course, being the remove 1 hit from anybody with an inherent ability. The next one that came out was no Teamwork Universe cards may be played this battle. All placed Teamwork Universe cards are discarded. And that's it. So any teamwork cards that they had placed that battle are discarded, and you can't play any teamworks this round. Again, in our universe segment, we heard how powerful teamworks are. So obviously, they put an event, and this was a promotional one. So this one's actually quite hard to get. Silver Sable, I believe it's called Hideout Discovered. If you are looking as a collector. So this one being incredibly good because obviously there's no more teamworks. You discard all the teamworks, and then any teamworks they have in there or drew that hand, they have to place those as well and don't get to play them. So you get all that additional information because they do not get to keep them in their hand or else they're discards. What an amazing any mission. Seeing a lot of play lately as teamworks became quite prevalent again, and so people are playing a lot of anti-teamwork event strategies lately and adding this in as an accoutrement to certain event sets. The last one that came out, I think it came out in Classic again, is, and I can't even recall the name, and I'm going to paraphrase even the event. It was in any mission that basically says if you draw or discard, or if I draw or discard, now whether that be through discarding something from my hand or discarding a card that's placed, or drawing off an avoid, or drawing for any reason out of my deck for whatever purpose, as long as it says that you are drawing and not replacing, then I also get to do it, or you get to do it. Whatever happens, whoever does something of that mechanic, the other person also gets to do it. I think this started happening because of the draw mechanic days, and all those draw threes and reasonings of those lines. Like, it started to become a really big meta at the time, and as I said, OverPower was always trying to balance itself out with future cards, and which a good card game does, especially when you're not limiting your card pool and playing with everything. So another powerful event. This one did see a lot of play and still sees a lot of play, as there, even in the Renaissance days of Overpower, draw decks and draw mechanics have become a huge part of the meta. And maybe not currently at the exact moment, but even just recently, has been tournament winning strategies. So you can imagine that adding any of those 3 any missions to your already potent strategy could be a very, very effective way to go. The last thing I'm going to talk about is there's now also a new home base. So now, of course, the home base is something that you choose, which generally usually benefits your strategy, or your team, or some sort of ability, or gives you the ability for basic universe or something along those lines. So the one that I'm going to reference today is a brand new one that came out as an event promo, and I believe it'll probably come out. The event promos are usually just foil versions of cards that will come out later as reprints throughout the game. This one is called Event Horizon. Very cool name, very cool card, especially the foil print of it. Very beautiful. I can imagine that one day it will be well sought by collectors. So as we mentioned, some of these home bases, they do cost deck building points, and deck building points, of course, is a reference to your grid building total for your total deck, and that's 76 points. And usually when you're taking something for your home base, you have to take it away from that. So again, I always like to give people a quick reference of a 19-point average for most characters. And that reference is because, each of your characters can be 19 points, and that equals 76. So you have to sort of make one of them 18 if you want to put this home base in there for yourself, as it does cost 1 deck building point. So I think you'll get the idea of what I'm trying to say there. So this one, Event Horizon, is a unique event because it allows you to draw a card for every event that's drawn. Now, you're like, Marcel, I already get to do that. So what I'm trying to say is, yes, you draw 8 cards and you draw an event card and you place it in the center, as I mentioned, and then your opponent does if they have one or not, and then you replace it. And now what I mean by replace it is you draw an additional card from the top for the event card that you're playing. So you're like, I already get to do that. Why would I spend 1 deck building point? Well, if you're playing a lot of events, and sometimes people are now playing up to like 2 to 4 or 5 events now, it's really getting to that point. That's how powerful they are, and people are just really building great strategies around events. You can duplicate events. And as I mentioned once before in an earlier podcast, if you duplicate events, and what do I mean by that? I mean, you draw 8 cards and you draw 2 events in the same hand. Well, in that situation, you get to choose which event you want to play. However, you only get to draw 1 card to replace the 1 event that you're playing. The other one is just considered a duplicate. Well, when you're playing Event Horizon, you actually get to draw for both cards. So if you're playing this particular home base, which again costs 1 deck building point to use, Event Horizon, then you actually, if you draw both, you still only get to choose 1 event, and only 1 event gets to play. However, you would actually draw 2 cards, even though you actually only are playing 1 event, and the other one's a discard. However, you would still get to draw for both of them. So just because it was a discard as a duplicate, you're still actually replacing it and not losing card advantage. So if you play a lot of events, it's actually a pretty decent thought. And it's just another one of those new home bases that's really trying to sort of like revolutionize the idea of cards that aren't really used that much. However, I will always say that events will and always will be probably the strongest game, as there's no way to stop them. They just go off. If you are set up and you have missions in certain places in terms of completed and reserve, and you get an event that just devastates your opponent, it truly is, the situation where it's the end of the game. You can venture as many cards as you can possibly do. So that's kind of the basics of events and missions, the stronger sort of ones that are out there, the thoughts behind them, how they're played, the strategies, how many to play, the any missions that are out there as well, and sort of like when and how they came out. You can imagine, again, some of the later mission sets allow you for potential that every activator in your hand can get any card underneath your battle site. What an amazing event that is. So you can just imagine, building a dynamic strategy between the specials and the universe cards and the power cards and the characters you've already chosen, and then using these events to sort of put the cherry on top of the amazing deck build that you've already started to create. So once again, thank you so much for joining me. This has been OverPower Basics events and missions. Probably, again, more events than missions. Missions just because how symbiotic they are to the events that they represent. So this is Marcel, the OPGOAT, the great one, the greatest overpower player ever, speaking to you from 10,000 feet above. So I look forward to hearing from you. So please drop a comment underneath if you have any thoughts about events and missions. Subscribe, like, and continue listening, because the Overpower Basics are just the basics, and we're going to get to some more advanced stuff as well when it comes to events and plays and thoughts along those lines. But this is the basics, and this is Marcel. Thanks again. Overpower Mountain Podcast. We're out.